you guys. I have a 21. Welcome to tonight's live stream. So tonight we're going to discuss a case study. So I love these case studies. Many of you that have followed our YouTube channel understand that this is kind of the bread and butter of what we do. We help you understand, do you have enough? Will you run out of money? How do you pay less tax? And we look at it in the context of the most important questions that our clients ask us on a daily basis. So in for a treat tonight, I'm really excited. Have with me Janice, certified financial planner professional, Eric, another certified financial planner professional, both lead advisors here at Oak Harvest Financial Group. Welcome, and your very first live stream. How do you feel?
I'm excited. I'm super excited.
I'm here for my YouTube debut.
It's both of your YouTube debuts.
Yeah.
So we've had Ryan, Ed has been on a few times, Nicole, who everyone always cheers when Nicole is on. She has so many fans as clients.
She does.
Lizzie's been on. Chad has been on one time. So we need to maybe get some of the other advisors on, but you guys, first time, so glad that you're here. Okay, so before we actually kind of jump into the case study, and what we're going to do tonight is actually connect your screen to my computer, and this is going to be just like we're on an appointment. So if you're a client watching this, this is going to be somewhat familiar to you. If you're not a client or have never come across Oak Harvest Financial Group, this is your first time, I think you're in for a treat, because I think one of the most important things that we do is keep you connected to your plan. And we do that through various software that I like to say creates visibility. Guys, you've heard me say this before. I would never hop in my car and go on the Beltway and drive to the Woodlands in a rainstorm if I had no windshield wipers, no headlights, no seat belt. It's not a good decision.
Don't forget the phone, Google Maps.
You wouldn't get very far too safely, so.
So if you do that, you don't have the visibility, right? You cannot see out the front windshield, and you're probably not going to get there. And so many times, I mean, you guys see it every single day. You sit with far more clients these days than I do. Have you ever seen a prospective client kind of come in and actually have clear visibility into which accounts they're withdrawing from, what they're doing from a tax planning perspective? We're going to talk about risk allocation, or risk congruence tonight, and we're actually going to ask for an audience member to participate, and this is going to take place in about 5 minutes. Before I get into the raffles and some of the other things that we're going to do tonight, have you ever seen anyone, guys, come in, Janice, I'll ask you first, that already has clear visibility of where all their income is coming from, what they're doing from a tax standpoint?
They think they do. I'll leave it at that. Some of them have a good plan in their eyes, but we certainly have a lot more tools with this software program to really be able to give them more concise clarity and a pathway that can save them some taxes along the way.
Yeah. Eric, do you see it often, or is it something that's a bit more opaque?
Yeah, it's a bit more opaque, simply just because when folks enter retirement, initially it's all about the numbers, but you realize you have so many more preferences involved with how you want to go about things, what decisions you want to prioritize, and that's where there's a lot of kind of vagueness going into retirement, is people to understand what choices they actually have and what paths they can go down based on just who they are as people.
And so we're in Houston. So one thing about Houston is that we have a lot of engineers, right? We have rocket scientists down at NASA that are clients. We have, you name it, Exxon,
petroleum
Chevron.
engineers.
you name it. Every oil and gas company in Houston, probably we have a client there. And engineers are some of the most intelligent people in the entire world. When I first moved down to Houston and started Oak Harvest Financial Group, people told me that, Troy, you don't have a chance to succeed down there because it's nothing but engineers. And engineers are the most analytical, the most pains in the you-know-what. And it's just not a place where you want to go and open a financial firm. I said, you know what? I want to be in Houston. And we did it. And one of my kind of why I think we've been successful here is because I'm naturally like that from an analytical standpoint, but I also have the ability to kind of break things down in a more simple and easy to understand fashion. But the spreadsheets that I've seen over the years from engineers that have come in to Oak Harvest to sit down and say, Troy, I got it all figured out. And here's the spreadsheet, and we've seen like Visual Basic charts. I've seen graphs that can literally like move in Excel. I mean, we see a lot of this stuff, but what we really don't see is a tying together of all the different components of what we call the retirement success plan. And the first three steps there are, of course, risk management, the investment allocation, income planning, Social Security, dividends, pensions, rental income, IRA distributions, non-qualified income distributions. And then the big one that we're going to get into tonight, it's going to be kind of more the latter half, the back 30 minutes of tonight's presentation, the tax distribution, the tax planning side of things. And when you can tie all those together, that's what we call visibility. Because when you can see, Eric, I'll kind of toss this over to you, what type of emotions, what type of feelings do you ever like hear in response to clients once they all of a sudden they come in, they have X amount of dollars, it's 500,000, it's 2 million, and they want to spend this, and they come in and they're afraid to actually spend money because they recently retired, and now all of a sudden it's like the sun has started shining, the windshield wipers have come on, the headlights, the seatbelt, they feel secure, all those things, and now they can see how the day-to-day decisions that they're making are impacting their long-term security. What's some of the common feedback that you hear once you walk clients through that process and they can see?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the phrase I hear, I think, the most is, oh my gosh, I'm not making any more money. But as financial planners, we know that's not true, right? The idea behind an income plan and a tax plan and an investment allocation that works for you is that the game just changes a little bit, right? You are still running the same race, it's just now you're at a different leg that has a little bit of a different approach to it, and ultimately, when folks kind of enter retirement and talk about spending and talk about ultimately, hey, where does that money come from? They're simply going back to my point of just saying that there's too many decisions that they're having to comb through and think about that is a little bit more complex than just live and save, live and save, live and save, like, and work like they have done for the past 20, 30 plus years, right? It's just a new part of life that requires different decisions and somebody oftentimes to help them understand what choices they have. And
it's a different chapter in the book. Yeah. And when you say not making any money anymore, what you're referring to is the paychecks have stopped. They don't have any more income coming in. Yeah. Janice, any comments once you kind of go through that planning process and someone who maybe was afraid to spend money and now all of a sudden they have a bit more clarity, someone who maybe was, they weren't living their best life, their best retirement because they were afraid. Do I have enough? Is my money going to run out? If something happens to me, will my spouse be okay? And then you kind of walk them through and we get them connected to the software that we're going to show you tonight as we go through, and they can see it and they can log in and they can participate with their own plan. What are some of the common things that maybe you hear from people once they, cross that nexus to here they are, no visibility,
right.
To now I feel a lot more comfortable with being able to understand where I'm at.
Sure. Yeah. I know a lot of people, they retire and they feel like their budget, they're going to be on a budget. And I honestly hate the word budget. I don't like a diet. I'm not going to stick to it. So why would you be on a budget? I'm probably going to break it anyway. But yeah, we'll definitely have people that, will talk to each other, and honestly, it's usually the husband will look at the wife and we say, we're going to need to cut back now. The paychecks have stopped. And absolutely not. You've worked your whole lives to save this money. Now it's time to live. So part of our job as a planner is being the motivator. We've we show them, we give them the clarity they need to show how their plan is going to grow, how their portfolio is going to continue to grow, how much they can spend within those go-go years. So, yeah, I mean, one extreme situation is I had one individual, they retired before 65, before Medicare, and they're like, we live close to the border. We'll just we're not going to pay for health care. We'll just go cross the border if we need to. And it's like, no, your success rate is there. Please, 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 let's get you enrolled in healthcare. So by all means, it's an exciting job for me, I will tell you, when I can sit there and the aha moment comes in and you have the clarity so yeah, we can go have some new experiences.
Don't have to cross the border for medical care.
Do not cross the border for medical care. Do it here, do it here.
Okay, so a couple of house cleaning items here just to get out of the way. We're going to do 2 raffles tonight. The first one will be in about 20 minutes. We're going to give away a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. So, I probably should have asked this before we started the live stream, but Heather, is there a QR code on the screen? How do people register? So there's a QR code on the screen. If you download or at least scan the QR code, and I imagine we have some type of informative report there, it's going to register you for an opportunity to win this gift card. So we're going to do 2 of those tonight, one in about 20 minutes and then one at the end of tonight's program. Other than that, we want this to be interactive. So we're going to go through. Drewski, nice to see you, man. He says it's going to be another great show. We love these. We really, really look forward to them. Even Eric and Janice, we were talking before this, and we're excited. We love to do this. Yeah. Mr. Ed Rossi has joined us, and he says, "Great to see SEE in all caps, you all." So Ed, great to see you, man. Ed had eye surgery, and I'm not quite sure you can see us. Can you see us, Ed? Could you tell me in the comments if you can see us, or you're just listening?
Are you just listening?
Stephanie, not a client, in LA. Enjoys the podcasts, also an engineer. So, hey, you fit in pretty well down here. Stephanie. Michelle from Tampa. Tracy. Michelle, how you doing? Tracy from Baytown, Texas. Okay, so Jim, how you doing? League City. I'm glad you tuned in. I haven't seen you in a little bit, but glad you're here. Fast Eddie, of course, one of our most attended visitors. We should get Fast Eddie. Did Fast Eddie win a gift card? Do you know? Fast Eddie, if you haven't won a gift card, we should, well, I guess we can't just do that for you, but we really appreciate. I think you've attended every single live stream that we've done. That means a lot to us. Thank you.
We might
very
need
much.
a tutorial for him on how to scan the QR code. Maybe he doesn't know, Fast Eddie.
Hey, I'm sure he's in there. Okay, Ed can see. That's great news. And Fast Eddie says, no, he has not. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it, guys. If you have questions as we go through this, and I'm going to need a participant, I'm going to ask for a live audience participant here in a few minutes. We're going to go through what we call a risk willingness questionnaire. So what we're going to do then is talk about the willingness for you to take risk, and this is completely hypothetical. You don't have to answer it according to how you actually feel. We just need someone to participate to tie this into the entire retirement planning process. So we're going to ask for a volunteer in just a few minutes here. But first I want to lay out the parameters, or I should say kind of the specs for this case study. So the title was, I'm 65, I believe, 65 with 1.4 million in retirement. And like always, we want to help determine how much you can spend in retirement. We want to help you pay less tax in retirement. So this is the case study that we're going to go through. We're going to pull up the software right now. Eric, if you could go ahead and turn it over to me on the computer side so everyone can see. And what we're going to do, so for the first 20 minutes, we're going to go through the financial planning side. We're going to tie in that risk management where I'm going to ask for a volunteer. If you guys have questions along the way, please throw them in the chat box. I'm going to do my best to answer them, get the team here involved. But what I also want to do is make sure we stay on track because we want to provide an extremely informative session for you guys tonight. So the last 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, we're going to get into the tax side of things. And in the tax, that's step 3 of the retirement success plan. So logically how this goes is without investments, there is no income. Without income, you don't have to worry about taxes. So investments, managing risk, generating income, and then how do we save in taxes? Now in the real world, we do all these three at the same time, right?
Right.
It's not necessarily a sequential thing, but it makes sense from a communication standpoint. Okay, Eric, are they able to see the computer screen?
Almost.
Okay, we're almost there.
Yes.
Okay, so you are there. Okay, guys, so what we have here is something that, I don't know, it's been 10, 11, 12 years ago we started doing this for clients. I've always been of the belief that you worked so hard your entire life, it's really important that you enjoy the money that you spend. But what I saw in the very beginning years of my career were people were scared to spend money. And we'd have a plan put together, and let's say it's Mr. Smith. He comes in to see me on the anniversary appointment or quarterly review, and he says, Troy, I really haven't spent what we planned for. And I say, why is that? He says, well, I just don't feel comfortable. My paychecks just stopped. I'm not quite sure how long my money will last. I don't feel comfortable spending this level of income. So what we started to do was to create a go-go spending plan where we spend a certain amount of money over the first 5 years, 7 years, 10 years with a baseline amount of spending first. So that's what we see right here. We see the baseline of $72,000 with a go-go over the first 5 years of $24,000. So as the title states, 65, so both husband and wife here are 65 years old. They have $1.4 million in retirement accounts, all of that money in these tax-infested accounts, and they actually have another $50,000 in a joint savings account. So, Janice, talk to me a little bit about, in everyone here, the go-go plan. Like, how important is that? Because do you see often where people are afraid to spend money once they retire?
Absolutely, they get nervous. The paychecks stop. Maybe we've done the plan for them, but there's still that level of comfort. And when I talk to my clients is, your retirement success plan is about peace of mind. So our goal is to get you to that level of confidence with the clarity and the peace of mind of, we're going to go out and make experiences. That may be experiences. Some people love to travel. They want to go to different countries. Some people, they're homebodies. They want to stick around, but they have grandchildren. So I really emphasize the importance of make memories, because there is going to come a time, usually around your slow-go years, around 75, you'll slow down. You don't want to go out to eat as much. It's harder to handle the grandkids. And you don't know when that slow-go year is going to happen. I mean, nowadays, we're big on eating organic foods at home. There's so much in our foods and so forth that we don't know when we're going to get dementia, when we're going to get cancer, when that slow-go is going to come. So definitely use your plan, use our recommendations, and go and experience and enjoy those go-go years.
Just spend it, because I think too many people don't spend enough, and they end up potentially passing away with a lot more money and maybe missed out on some opportunities. So Eric, what about you? Whenever people come in and see you and you sit down, how reluctant are they typically to spend money, and maybe how much more confidence do they gain after having a bigger connection to their plan?
Well, the first thing I always tell my clients when it comes to spending, and obviously when we start looking at the plan, we start with those numbers, right? You see the numbers on the screen, and when you see that there on a screen that's being used for analysis and all sorts of those different things, a lot of people feel constrained by that. And so the idea of what we're really trying to do is establish, and I know, Troy, this is one of your favorite phrases, establish guardrails in retirement, right? And the number that you see on the screen there, how often, when you set a budget for yourself, I know a lot of you are budgeters out there, and let's just say you spend $5,000, $6,000 a month, how many months in a row is that the exact number that you spend, right? And so when I talk to my clients about their spending habits and different things, especially when they start retirement, we're still feeling out that process for often the first 2-3 years of retirement. And our job as planners is to connect them back to understanding, hey, this is what you've done over the last 6 months in that next review. Hey, do we need to dial it back? Is this actually okay at the end of the day? And understanding how those patterns develop over time, especially when going from the go-go years to the slow-go years to the no-go years. And I think that's a huge piece of it is, once you work with us, you understand how those things start to affect that plan over time.
Okay, so Eric, if you could go back to the computer screen here. So what we have, 1.4 million in retirement accounts, both spouses 65 years old, spending goal of about $96,000 a year, but broken down. So that baseline spending there, let me go back to it so everyone can kind of see it. Baseline spending goal of $72,000 per year, and then for the first 5 years of retirement, 24. And I love the play zone because what we're going to show you a little bit later, probably about 10 minutes from now, is the play zone where, okay, what happens if you increase this baseline spending from 72 to 80 or 90 or 95? At what point does your probability of success start declining to a point where it's pretty clear you're spending too much? And then the go-go. Okay, what if 72 is an appropriate baseline because that's what we're going to spend adjusted with inflation for the remainder of our life to cover our fixed costs and normal day-to-day living? But what if we wanted to fly first class? We went to Rome, right? Because here we're planning on $2,000 a month in the go-go years, first 5 years of your retirement. But you know what? You've worked hard. You don't need to sit in economy in the back. Can we get in first class? Can we have some champagne when we get onto the plane, please? How does that impact your plan? And what if you want to do that for the first 4 years, 6 years, 7 years? So we're going to look at the play zone, and what that's going to tell us is if we spend more in the beginning years of retirement to really enjoy everything it is that we've created, does that jeopardize your security? And that's really what it comes down to, because all these dollars, people ask me, Troy, where did you come up with the name Oak Harvest Financial Group? Simple answer. Oak is strong, it's dependable, it's reliable, it's going to be there for you. That's who we want to be for you. Harvest, it's what you do when you retire. You spend an entire career building assets, saving money, socking it away. And now all of a sudden the paychecks have stopped and it's time to harvest what it is that you've put into your investment accounts, your 401ks, your IRAs. So Oak Harvest Financial Group. So this is the baseline. 72 plus 24 gets us to about 96. That 24, though, according to this plan, is going to go away at the end of 5 years. So that's the go-go spending. Now, we didn't add a slow go in here, and Janice, you mentioned that, but a lot of times we'll have a baseline, a go-go, and then a slow go to, hey, we may want to fly first class, once a year, maybe not 2 or 3 times a year. So we'll add that in there. $30,000 a year for John, $24,000 a year for Jane. So this is completely hypothetical. We're just taking numbers. We're throwing them in here. We're looking at a moderate risk tolerance here, not aggressive growth rates. And we're looking at what happens with the portfolio over time if we spend various amounts of money, and how do we plan for taxes. So just laying out some of the parameters here. So that's the Social Security income. Tentatively, we always kind of start at full retirement age for when you will distribute or when you will start taking Social Security, and we can adjust from there. We were talking about it before. I mean, Eric, a lot of times, I know you have some opinions, and Janice, you do as well, and Ed, who's on the chat here, Ed definitely has some opinions on Social Security. I think as a firm, we could classify it as somewhat indifferent as to the timing of when you take Social Security. So many firms are, you need to take it at 70, I know over my career, I've had a lot of people I've advised it makes more sense for you to take it at 62 or 64 or 67 or defer till 70 because it's really going to help you be more secure. And Eric, you brought up a good point. You want to talk about kind of when it makes sense maybe for one spouse to defer Social Security longer than the other?
Yeah. And so many times, I see a lot of folks, and what you're seeing on the screen here are 2 Social Security benefits that are very close to each other. But more oftentimes than not, we see maybe one person earned a lion's share of the income, whether it was the husband or the wife. And when you talk about Social Security, right, one of the biggest things that we talk about, obviously on the first hand, Troy, to your point, is just the numbers, right? Understanding, hey, what gets you the most benefit based on which age that you take it. But I think I said earlier, it's more than the numbers at the end of the day. It's understanding what decisions are we actually making. And one of them is when somebody passes away within that couple, what's left at the end of the day is just one of the Social Security benefits. and it's going to be the higher of the two. And so one way that people want to protect their spouse, because that's such a common thing that people bring in as a preference that is completely unnumbers related at the end of the day. And so understanding that, hey, the reason that you may want to push one of those benefits further is just to make sure you leave the person remaining with the best benefit possible. So.
Yeah, and I like to point out too that Social Security is a very important part of your overall retirement plan. I say indifferent as a firm, but I don't want that to come across as, well, we don't care when you take it. We're indifferent to the extent that we don't believe everyone should take it at age 70, right? And we're indifferent to the extent that it's not. It's about your other assets. It's about your willingness to take risk. How is your investment portfolio constructed? We're not going to point you in one direction or the other. What we're going to do is understand who you are, listen to what's important to you, and then objectively analyze everything that you have going on from an assets and income standpoint, tax characterization of the various accounts, and then help you decide what makes the most sense mathematically, but then also based on who you are, you know, what we think makes the most sense subjectively. And then at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to choose given that information. So we're really, Janice, we're information providers. Would you say that's kind of what you do a lot on your visits?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about giving you the clarity, and we have the software that can do that. We're going to make a recommendation to you, but you're going to have an opinion as well. And when I work with my clients, I like to say, our relationship is, I'm the CFO in the relationship, I'm the expert, and my team is the expert on the subject matter. But you guys, you're the CEO in the relationship. So I'm going to give you as much information as I can so that you can make a decision with confidence. And guys, that's what's going to build out your retirement plan and give you the success and the peace of mind that you have and the confidence to go and spend on that go-go spending years. Because we'll tell you what makes sense. I mean, we have engineers come in with their Social Security and they're like, this is my break-even point. This is what I want to go with. And we're like, well, don't forget about your bride next to you. She's, wants to be part of this, and she might have a longer life. So a lot of different factors, and your opinions matter as well. Sometimes it's just a matter of comfort.
Okay, so we are going to do the raffle in just a couple of minutes here. I want to touch on a couple of questions here. Kind of lost my spot here. Okay, Mr. Bourne, how you doing? Tom Ball, very good to see you. Mr. Ashby, we received a question. Do you guys have the questions pre-submitted? So, Stephen, we did receive your pre-submitted question. We will get to that towards the end of tonight. Fast Eddie, no, we can't make you smarter, man. We can only try to help you out if you hire us, but otherwise, just hopefully you learn from these live streams. So that's the goal. We want to help people learn more about retirement. Mm-hmm. Okay, so no big questions here. So actually, we have a lot of comments. Okay. We are going to I'm going to jump right into 3 different modules. I'm going to look at the sequence of return module we're going to hit the probability meter to see where this couple ends up. We're going to hop into the sequence of return, and then the individual trials, and then the play zone. So we're going to do those 3 things, and for a lot of you that may not make sense, but they're very impactful, and I think they're going to enlighten a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis to help you understand how your decisions are impacting your retirement. Before we do that, though, Heather, do we have the first winner?
Actually, Hayden won.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Hey, Hayden. So you are the first winner of our raffle tonight. So congratulations. Our marketing team, I think Heather specifically, will be reaching out to you to deliver the gift card and get that information about your favorite restaurant. So thank you for tuning in. We really, really do appreciate you. Okay, so Eric, we're going to go right into... You know what, guys? I want to do the risk analysis. I want to do the risk thing. So
We need a volunteer.
yes. Okay, I'm going to refresh some of these so I don't get logged out. Then we have to go through the 2-factor authentication process. Okay, I need a volunteer. Who wants to volunteer to go through this questionnaire? And again, you don't have to answer it specifically to yourself, but this is going to tie in to the financial planning part that we're going to go through, and also the tax part that we're going to go through. So Who wants to be the volunteer here? And while we're waiting for somebody to kind of step up, and I guess I should give you a little information of what you're volunteering for. So we're going to ask you just some basic risk questions. It's going to take about 45 seconds here, maybe a minute, depending on how quickly you react to the questions. Usually your gut instinct is the best response, because if you start thinking too much, then usually your brain is going to start to overtake your heart. And that's not where you want to be when it comes to these types of things. Okay, so Stephen is the first one who says he wants to do it. Okay, so Stephen, I am going to ask you some basic questions. This is kind of what we would go through on a first visit, maybe a second visit with someone, depending on how things progress. And you are going to be our couple that you're going to pretend that you are the person that's 65 with 1.4 million. These do not have to be your answers. You can completely make up how you feel here in these questions. And I kind of realize now that I'm not going to hear you speak, so, okay, perfect. Okay, so here it is. So we have 1.4 million. This is a baseline question, and all we're trying to do, if you can see here, Stephen, so we can mathematically compute based on the historical performance of various stocks and bonds and how they relate to one another. What is the likelihood of a certain outcome happening? So that's where we're kind of going. But what we care about now is your willingness to watch your accounts go down in value and stay committed to a plan. Because no matter what plan we put together, if we have an investment strategy that's too aggressive for you and the market goes down below your threshold, your willingness to stay committed to a plan, everything else doesn't matter because it blows up. So what we're trying to identify here is, what is your comfort level? So this would be over a 6-month period with 1.4 million. A 10% decline would be about 140,000 or so. So, Mr. Ashby, are you comfortable over the next 6 months with your $1.4 million when the market declines, seeing those accounts decrease by 140,000? I'm going to wait for you to type in yes or no here.
How long ago did he give that thumbs up?
Oh, we're on about a 10-second delay. So,
Okay.
Okay, while we're waiting for that response, what I'll actually do here, Stephen, is you give me that first response, and then we have about 2 or 3 more questions, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of just adjust from there, so we don't have this delay that we're dealing with. So he said yes. Okay, so we're going to go through and say he says yes. My next question would be, go ahead, Eric, put me back here. So my next question is, I'm trying to identify what I call the guardrail or the boundary, right? What is the point where you're starting to feel uncomfortable? Because if, and this is very, very important, and we can do this every single year, and we often do, but we have to identify where you start to feel uncomfortable, because in the real world, when markets go down, if you have more risk than you're comfortable with, you're likely to make a bad decision, and that bad decision leads to, you know, multiple other bad outcomes. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we asked you this question, and you said, you know what, Troy, I'm pretty comfortable with about 15% here. So 200,000 over a 6-month period. That's fairly aggressive, because remember, this is 6 months. If we extrapolate that out to 12, now you're looking at 400,000, or at 1.4 million, it's roughly about 30% of that retirement account. So I would consider this to be a pretty aggressive willingness to take risk, but that's why we tweak it. So I'm going to hit this next button, go to the next question. And okay, so now this is what we chose in the middle, and they're asking us a simple risk reward question here. What is more comfortable? For the same level of reward, 204,000, to lose 204,000 potentially in the short term, would we rather have the same level of potential loss if we had more opportunity for gain? Or, you know what, Troy, I'd rather have the same potential for gain, but if you can get me this 204 on the upside potentially, I'd rather have much lower risk. So normally when we would be having this conversation with someone who is in retirement, approaching it, just recently retired, they're going to say, you know what, I created that baseline answer. I want a little bit less risk. And then now it's just going to ask us, do we want even less risk, or are we comfortable with our last answer? For the sake of time, I'm going to say we're comfortable with a little bit less, around the same answer there. We're going to go with the last choice. Okay, so this brings us to a 48. And Stephen, that may not be exactly your particular situation, but just because of the lag in the broadcast here, I wanted to expedite this. So what this risk number means, Janice, I'm going to go to you first, and then Eric, I want you to talk on this. This is a potential client who has a 48 risk score, which means on 1.4 million, over the next 6 months, if their accounts dropped in value 126,000, they are comfortable with that range of volatility. Now, why, Janice, is this so critical to building an overall retirement success plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that range, that's as far as they want to go. If they
It's
lose,
the extreme, it's the outside range.
Yeah, it's that bottom guardrail. If it's more than that, then there's a possibility that they could call me and say, you know what, Janice, we want to move all to cash. And that's usually going to be the worst time to do it. So I don't want to put them in that particular type of position where they're calling me asking to get out of the market or out of their investment portfolio at the worst possible time. So we definitely use that. And I'm sorry, Troy, I missed your question.
No, just
was
why
so
is that so important? Because this
Oh,
is what with the risk willingness that we talk about. So when we're building that retirement success plan, if you have someone that's outside of their comfort zone because we don't go through this exercise and we don't identify that ground floor level, that at this point I'm not sleeping at night if my accounts lose more than this. You know, why is that important when we build these plans?
Yeah, and absolutely. And not only from my point of view, I want to ensure that I don't build out a portfolio for you that is more aggressive or they'll take you beyond those guardrails. And also from a compliance level as well. We have a compliance officer here in-house, and he monitors our portfolios for our clients, our existing clients, because guess what? We have a bigger brother, SEC, that also is keeping an eye on things. So it's very important from our standpoint, from our relationship, and ensuring that your retirement success plan is giving you that peace of mind, but from a compliance standpoint as well. This is our way to be able to document and be able to have some particular way to measure the level of risk that's embedded. And
then Eric, before I go to you, I'm going to just to tie onto that compliance standpoint, because what I think is really cool is, and Nathan, I know you're watching, our compliance officer, so Nathan's amazing, but you know, he's strict about these things, and he should be. One of the coolest things that I think this software allows us to do for clients, which I believe is a tremendous benefit for them, is when the stock market is doing really, really, really well, and all of a sudden the stocks, the value of your stocks grow to a point to where they represent a larger percentage of your overall portfolio. So when your stocks grow more, and you started at, let's say, 60-40, but now the stocks have done so well, they represent 80% of your overall account, well, you have a lot more risk now. So from a compliance perspective, what Janice brought up, we get the email, right? Hey, you need to call these clients because their accounts have got out of balance with what they've told us their comfort level is with risk. So Eric, for you, before we get into the tax side of things and look at a couple of those modules, when someone has a willingness to, let's say, a 48, so 1.4 million, they're comfortable seeing the accounts drop about 120,000 over the next 6 months. 240 max really is what they're telling us over the course of 12 months. What does that mean to you whenever you go through this exercise and you have that conversation with someone?
So I'm going to dig into a word I've always used, and that's preferences, right? But the one thing that we know about plans is there are things that are going to make it successful, and there are things that are going to make it unsuccessful. And so what our job is to analyze that plan. And what I always describe to my clients when we're going and trying to understand the risk score and their risk willingness is every client, based on their numbers, has a range of risk that they can take to be successful, right? It could be as low as 20 and go all the way up to 70, right? That's based on your risk capacity versus your risk necessity. And the reason I dig into the willingness and the preference, to your point, is as long as their willingness falls within that band of something that's going to make them successful the way they want to do it at the end of the day, I'm a happy planner, right? I'm not going to push them to take more risk. I'm not going to try to make them take less risk because they know what they're comfortable with. And so that leads to a lot of good conversations, because very many times, maybe the risk willingness falls outside of that band. And then we have to have that conversation about what brings them within that range, because that's what's going to make them successful. And it may require them to get slightly out of their comfort zone, but that's what our job is then, again, to tie them back to the plan, to make them more comfortable with understanding how things are going to react and how that actually makes their plan successful versus potentially not.
You know, and over the years, one of the things that I've noticed is that when people take more risk, because in a bull market, you're often likely to forget about the pain that seeing your accounts go down in value causes. So what I found over the course of my career is people are more willing to take risk the kind of farther and farther in the rearview mirror that last recession comes, right? But we're in an interesting time frame right now to where we all went through the 2020, the market downturn, ended up being, you know, a rebound pretty quickly there. And then 2022, where the market was down. So we've had a couple of recent reminders, and I have noticed personally that people are more respectful of risk in the sense that, okay, it's a real thing. But I mean, from 08 to like 15 to 17, 18 was kind of a flat year across all asset classes. But throughout about a 10-year period there, you know, people forgot about what risk really was and how it could potentially ruin or you know, I mean, that's not hyperbole, that's the truth, but definitely jeopardize their long-term security and retirement. So what this helps us do, this risk score here, helps us identify what you're comfortable with. Okay, Eric, can I come back over here? Because now I want to go to a couple modules before I get into the tax analysis. Okay, so if you watch the YouTube videos, you've seen this a bunch of times. We're going to go kind of to the probability of success. And
the Monte Carlo simulation.
Yeah, so all this means is if you were to have this much money, want to spend this level of income over this life expectancy, what is the probability of success? So 99%, you know, that is a very good probability of success. But Eric, how many times has someone come in and they've been at, you know, 85% probability of success? Mm-hmm. What do you tell them?
So at the end of the day, it's what is the client comfortable with, but 85% means a lot of different things, 70% means a lot of things, 30% could mean a lot of things, right? Our conversation as planners is we can help the plan to a certain extent. If somebody comes in at a 30% plan, those are different decision points that we have to make. That's whether you spend less, save a lot more, invest quite a bit differently. At 80% and even 99% like this, it's how do we optimize that plan, bring that probability of success, and if legacy is a priority, how do we improve that legacy? If spending more is going to be what ends up happening as a result of a very successful plan, we're going to make those adjustments, right? It's understanding where are your options based on your probability of success and where are the steps that you can take from there.
So obviously this client can spend a lot more money, but Janice, if for you, and what we're going to do in just a minute here is go to the play zone where we can actually stress test how much is a comfortable level of spending before this 99% drops down to 92 and 88 and 85. But Janice, for you, let's say someone comes in, our team, so on the first visit, we gather all this subjective data of who you are, what's important to you, and then the objective data, the assets, what do you want to spend, your existing income sources. And then our team does all this analysis, builds this software out, and then when they come back in the second visit, we go through it with them, this and the tax analysis and everything else. But what if someone comes back at like an 80 with their existing plan? Are you telling them, you know, go back to work for 10 more years, or what are the fears that oftentimes you hear, and then sometimes, you know, is it that bad?
Yeah, no, we live in a world of overachievers. I mean, like we mentioned, we were here with a bunch of engineers in our neighborhood, but by all means, 80% is still a good level of success. You know, we have to remember we can't take the money when we go. Yeah, we wouldn't mind leaving it to, legacy plan for our grandkids, our kids, but for the most part, we save this money, or you save that money as individuals. And so now it's time to go in and spend it. So 80% is still a good level of success. There's lots of things that we do as planners. We'll go in and we'll ensure that, you're self-insured if you are to have a long-term care event somewhere down the road, whether it be just one of you or both of you if you're married. So those are all important aspects where us as planners, we're constantly thinking through your plan. It's not just entering numbers into the software. There's a lot of qualitative and fundamental measurements that we are doing as planners because we know you, we have a relationship, and we understand what's important to you. So we don't want to get embedded and stuck on the numbers and on the percentages.
And so, Eric, if you can come back to the computer here. So we take a very, I would consider a conservative outlook, right? So we're looking, typically when we're running rates of return over time, we're looking at 6.5, somewhere in that range with the various software that we use. And what I like to use is this individual trials. We talked about this, guys, when we worked together, when you guys both first came aboard, kind of went through like how important it is to go through the various modules that we have to show people the impact of stress testing, their decisions. So I like this because we cannot control what happens. So out of 1,000 trials, what Janice and Eric were referring to there, whatever your percentage of success is, it's only a representation of a certain number of successful trials, meaning you pass away with money out of 1,000. So an 80% means an 800 out of 1,000 simulations of various market outcomes based on your spending levels, based on your age, based on the goals that we've input. 800 out of 1,000, you are still successful. And Janice, that's why you say that, that's still a good number. Like if I could
And what age are we using? I'm sorry, Troy. What age?
65.
Okay.
65.
No, but the date
if-
of death, longevity of life.
We stretched it out to a 30-year retirement to make it, to stress the portfolio and the income
And that's another
spending.
factor that you have to keep in mind is, will you really live as long as we're projecting? Now, we want to make sure both of the individuals or whoever's in the plan are taken care of. So.
And that's kind of part of, one of the things that I've always done throughout my career is understanding, I try to build in conservative bits and pieces here or there, just as different layers of protection, kind of mechanisms of protection, so to speak. This is one of them, right? So not everyone's going to live to kind of 95, but at the same time, if we plan until 95, and then if we're stretching that spending out to kind of the outer boundaries, but it's, you really want to go on this trip. You really want to take all the kids and all the grandkids down to the beach, and you'd like to do that every single year for the next 6 or 7, and you want to get everyone together, spend time and create those memories. Like a client, 15, 16, 17 years ago told me this, Troy, I don't want to leave money to my kids. I want to leave memories to my children, and that's what it's about. So if we can create a plan that has you doing that, and that's an extra $25,000 a year or $35,000 a year, let's build it in. Let's make it $50,000, right? Because your kids are going to want to bring friends, and you're going to want them to enjoy themselves, an extra pizza, an extra this, an extra that. Let's build that extra into the plan, so that's creating extra levels of security, extra kind of barriers of protection. But so I like this because this is the individual trials scenario. So this is looking at the median stock market outcome, the 500th out of 1,000 simulation. So if I go this way, you can see that this is worst. Okay, so over here means the stock market has performed worse, your portfolio has performed worse than you were anticipating, than you were planning. How does that impact your overall plan? Are you jeopardizing your security? And I love this bar graph because what this shows us is several different things. I want to be careful not to go too far down the rabbit hole here into sequence of returns risk, but we have now trial 759 has an average return of 4.5% compared to what we were previously looking at, about 5.6%. And we see a really positive year, the first year of retirement, a negative year, and then several positive years, and then boom, a negative, some modest years, then a negative. And it's simply showing us, if we go down here, the value of your portfolio given that particular return outcome, portfolio return outcome. So what I would say, and I know you guys would say this too, guys, is look, if we're in a bad, I should say bad, unexpected, underperforming market environment, and we're still at, look at our bar graph. These are our values. On the y-axis here, we started with 1.4 plus 50,000 in a joint savings account. Now we're at 1.6, 1.4. We're in this range. Look, we've gotten through the risky years, and I say the risky years because of the sequence of returns risk.
Right after you retire.
Yep, and we're still staying pretty level in an underperforming market environment. The conversation I'm going to have with you is, do you want to donate to charity? Do you want to give more to the kids? Do you want to spend more on more trips, on more family vacations? How do we spend more? How do we?
Do you want that
if you
shiny
want
RV?
to. Yeah. Do you want that shiny RV? Do you want the boat? Now the boat, it's a different story. Boats can be pretty expensive, and we can see those kind of bar graphs and other things maybe go down a little bit
Because it's not
more
just
quickly.
the boat, it's
everything else.
yeah, the service.
The sunken cost.
Yeah, so I mean, look, we put in a pretty conservative for this level of assets and Social Security income spending level. But again, these are some of the tools that we're trying to stress test. And I'm going to jump over to the play zone so I can spend some time on taxes. But for me, guys, and you can talk about this while I'm going through this. If someone's in that position, what type of conversation are you having with them?
You guys need to look at each other and start talking about some of your dreams, some of the things you want to do before those hips and those knees are starting to give out on you. Yeah, definitely go have a good dinner and start talking to each other. Figure out how you're going to really make some wonderful experiences, whether it just be with you, your own self, or with your family, or charitable gifting. You want to do it when you're alive. You don't want to do it when you're gone. It's so much better to do all those joyful things when you're alive and doing well.
Okay, so I've been so focused on kind of going through this, I've not answered any questions. So I'm going to look at a couple of questions real quick, and then get into the play zones where we're going to stress test different spending levels, and then we're going to look at the taxes because taxes are so important. We want to spend a little bit of time looking at that. And then we do have the raffle. Heather, want to do the raffle in about 10 minutes?
Perfect.
Okay, so 10 minutes, we're going to do the raffle. The second raffle, if you're just tuning in, there should be a QR code on your screen. You can scan that, download the report that we're offering there, and that's going to register you for an opportunity to win a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant, and our marketing team will reach out to you to coordinate that. So we're going to do that in about 10 minutes if you have not registered yet. Okay, so we have, John says, I could handle 5% loss over 6 months, and that is completely normal, right? Like, that is legitimately what we hear, I'd say 80% of the time, because it's especially once you've kind of retired and it sinks in that you're no longer in the accumulation phase, it's no longer about wealth building, that you've worked hard, you've done it, you've built it, now you have to come down the other side of the mountain. Why risk it? If you don't need 10 or 11% per year, why put yourself into a situation to where you could lose 50% of everything that you've worked for when the next COVID comes or the next big financial crisis or recession? So Eric, Janice, feel free to kind of chime in on any experiences you have with clients there, and I'm going to look for a couple of questions, and then we're going to get to the next module that we want to go through.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is about your plan, right? And I explained it as best I could with my hands because I like to talk with my hands sometimes, but everyone has that range of risks that they can take to be successful, and it's driven by so many different factors. And I know we had that graph up earlier, and you noticed that there was a big jump 5 years from now, and that's because Social Security and those things come in. We talk about income, we talk about all of the things that are going to supplement our spending in retirement, and so it's actually really interesting because I have clients that actually take less risk at the beginning of their retirement, and then when all of their guaranteed sources of income, whether they have a pension, whether they have Social Security, and those things start to pick up the slack and cover the majority of the spending, they become more legacy focused and actually can take more risk. I have clients that take more risk in their 80s and 90s than they did in their 60s because they actually needed those dollars to spend every single day, as opposed to Social Security and all these things kicking in later on. So,
And there's less life expectancy at that point.
exactly.
So there's
More
less,
vision on how they're doing.
yeah, more understanding of the real risks, right? And,
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about taxes.
Before I do that, I want to go to the play zone.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Eric, bring me back over here because I want to stress test the spending because this is one of my favorite features when we work with clients, and this is part of the visibility discussion, right? So the plan came in at 99%, 1.4 million, spending a baseline of 72,000. That's increasing with inflation. I believe we have it set at 2.5% long-term inflation. Go-go years, the first 5 years, so from 65 until 70, spending an extra $24,000 a year. So 96,000 for the first 5 years of retirement, and then 72 inflation adjusted over the remainder life expectancy. But you know what? You came in at 99%, and we went through some of these other modules, and we see even in a poor performing market, your asset balances are still keeping, fairly stable. So typically the conversation I would have, and you guys know as well as I do, no matter how much you maybe encourage someone to spend a little bit more, it's going to take a year or 2 or 3 for them to be comfortable with actually spending a little bit more.
Right.
But I think this is one of the greatest things we do because it's not about money. It's so much about memories with the family and the people that you love. And the way you create memories is by getting the family together and spending it. But you have to do so in a way that you feel comfortable, that doesn't jeopardize your security over the long term, and also mentally you need to feel comfortable with spending that level of money. So the first thing I would do is I'd come here and I'd say, look, we're going to take your baseline spending up to 80, let's say 86,000, and we're still going to have the go-go here. So for the first 5 years, we're spending an additional 24,000 on top of that. And look, 94%. And I would go through the other modules and start to look at some sequence of returns risk and some of the other components that really impact your long-term security. But hey, 94%, feeling pretty good about that. And I always like to go with the baseline first, personally, because it has a bigger impact on this probability number because it's for a longer period of time.
It's your entire plan.
So let's bring this up. Let's say 94. What does that do? Okay, so now we're starting to see some impact. Me, personally, I would still be comfortable with 83. But I've done this long enough to know that that's going to start to make some people feel a little bit uncomfortable. So, okay, Janice, we're at 94 baseline, 24,000 go-go in the first 5 years of retirement. What, and it's dropped to 83. What's maybe something that you would hear in a conversation you have on a day-to-day basis with clients?
Yeah, no, 83, like I said, everybody wants to be an overachiever. They even want to get to 100, and I have to break it to them. It only goes to 99, folks. So it really depends. The same with the risk willingness. When we do this questionnaire, I'll have some clients tell me, well, what should I be comfortable with? It is a personal preference. It is your own emotions on how much you can sustain because it's about peace of mind, right? So really it depends on the individuals, but I would say more people start to become uncomfortable, particularly with those individuals that are coming in right before they're retiring, right? Their paychecks are going to stop and they're just like, I want to be in that 90s. I want to be at the 99, closer to the 99. And that's where we go back to. Sometimes it takes a year or 2 for them to really start to believe and feel confident with their plan, even though we've shown it to them in black and white. But you know what? That's just the beginning, Troy, with us entering this information into our software, because guess what? As planners, we have other tools in our toolbox to be able to optimize. It's all about, what tools are we going to use into their portfolio, because we might provide guaranteed income. You have Social Security. How nice would it be to have some mailbox money where you just have money coming in, it's guaranteed? That's also going to increase your success rate as well. So tools, potentially some tax planning, which we'll get to here in a little bit, there's other things that we can do as planners to be able to increase it.
So yeah, so guaranteed income, Janice is referencing some of the higher rates that are available with some of the fixed annuities that are out there today. And of course, guarantees mean it's subject to the claims paying ability of the insurance carrier. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is some of the conflicts of interest within the industry. So we're going through kind of this financial planning consideration, but this actually brings up a good point because it happened at the seminar that the financial presentation, the seminar that I did the other night. Someone wanted to talk about annuities, and you have variable annuities, you have fixed indexed annuities, but as investment advisors, we have our investment advisor hat, but then when you're in insurance, you're discussing insurance, you kind of put on your insurance hat. And there's a lot of conflicts of interest because insurance strategies, they pay us commissions, we have different levels of compensation, and that creates a conflict of interest for the consumer. But the value that is out there right now from a guaranteed income standpoint, it's, I've never seen value, in my opinion, this strong. But as a consumer, you have to be aware of some of these different conflicts of interest that exist within the industry. And so when we talk about a lot of this financial planning stuff, the baseline, I call it baseline income planning that you're referring to. And let me actually pull up a chart over here that goes through, it's called the secure income chart. And I personally love this because I've always said that once I hit age 50, I'm going to...
You're not 50?
44, Janice, 44.
I'd pick on him because I am.
Once I hit 50, I'm going to buy an annuity. I'm probably going to put $1 million into an annuity, and I'm going to let it sit there, and I'm going to let it defer, and I'm going to start taking income at 60. Because with annuities, you can't take income prior to 59 and a half without a penalty. But I love this chart right here because one of the things that I think our clients love the most when we do talk about baseline income planning, and we're gonna get to the taxes, but you bring up a good point and I'd like to share this. So it's a gap, right? The red is a gap in your income. And we see you retire, there's a big gap. We have to pull this amount of money to hit your goals. But then we have as the baseline, again, to your point, we haven't optimized Social Security. We haven't looked at one spouse taking it sooner, another spouse deferring it. This is the baseline analysis. But we have to create the baseline because we can't make adjustments and do various comparative analyses of your situation until we have the baseline. But look, we have these gaps. And I've been doing this a long time, and I tell you this, very rarely when we talk about filling the gap between what you want to spend, that's the orange line there. So let me uncheck all. So this is your inflation adjusted goals and needs that we've talked about throughout this presentation. You see how inflation impacts it, even though the go-go goes away. So we were at, I believe, 72 plus 24 for the first 5 years. And then it drops to just the baseline, 72, the go-go spending goes away. And then we see that inflation impacting our needs because our purchasing power erodes over time. And then when we come back and we look at our Social Security, which is the blue line, the red represents our gap. I can't tell you how many times over the years that I've sat with someone and had the discussion about one alternative solution, which was filling that gap with some type of guaranteed income source. And then we can let the other 500, 1 million, 2 million, 6 million, whatever that number is, be a little bit more aggressively invested in the stock market. If you don't have to worry about withdrawing from your investment portfolio, what I found over the course of my career, and I know we've talked about it, you guys find this too, is that you're a little bit more comfortable with the ups and downs of the market. But going back to the annuity side of things, we see a lot of people out there just doing annuity pitches, annuity presentations, and a lot of times there is the conflict of interest. They're making large commissions. We make large commissions. If you buy an annuity, it doesn't come from your money, but typically annuity commissions pay 5%, 6%, 7%. So there's tons of conflicts of interest within that, but that commission does not come from your account. It comes from the marketing budget of the insurance carriers. And as long as you're aware of that and you can see how it fits into your plan, that's what transparency is about. That's what, in my opinion, building a plan to fill all the gaps and showing you what alternatives are available to you. That's really what financial planning is about. So a little bit of a tangent there that I kind of went on, but I think it's important that some of those things are disclosed and also tie into the retirement planning, because I think annuities are, look, variable annuities, you know, back in the day, and Eric, you and I have talked about this, they were extremely competitive. Today, you know, from what we see, maybe not nearly as competitive as some of the fixed products on the market, but they're all tools. They're all tools that fit into a financial plan, and some of them may work for you, some of them may not work for you, but it's important that you understand how they work and some of the pros and cons.
Right.
Okay, Eric, got a little sidetracked there. Love the secure income analysis, but I want to bring up the tax side of things. Okay, so we have the tax analysis here. We still have a decent amount of people tuned in. So before we do the tax analysis, I'm going to show you before we get into the details. So we have two different things here. We're going to do the answer, or we're going to do the winner to the raffle in just 1 minute. But first I'm going to show you. So now what we're looking at here is a baseline. So this is conventional wisdom on the left. What this means is, or excuse me, this is a proactive tax strategy on the left here. So what we're seeing is if we take advantage of this, I call it a window of opportunity, because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires or sunsets within 2 years, or at the end of 2025. Right now, the tax brackets are larger than they have ever been, and the tax rates are very, very low. So we can take advantage, and this is not just during that period of time, it also extends out this Roth conversion strategy beyond that, but you have a limited window of opportunity to really take advantage of some lower rates to pay less on these conversions. This base analysis is about $250,000 of estimated taxes less that you would pay with the proactive tax strategy versus what we call conventional wisdom. In this particular case, it's really not doing anything because they have $50,000 of non-qualified money and $1.4 million in IRAs. So that means you spend the $50,000, then you're just withdrawing from the IRAs. And what that does, we'll talk about this, is it drags your Social Security into a higher state of taxation, potentially your Medicare into a higher state of taxation, and even your investment income with the net investment income tax. Okay, so we're going to dive into this tax analysis. We're running a little bit late, but we still have a lot of people here tuned in, so I think you guys are waiting for this tax analysis. We're going to go through the Roth conversion side of things and also have some expert discussion here. Heather, who do we have as the next winner for our raffle tonight?
It's Tim LeClaire.
Tim LeClaire. So Tim, congratulations. You are the winner of our second raffle tonight, and Heather will reach out to you to coordinate the restaurant and the gift card that you will receive. So Tim, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Okay, so I want to go back to looking at some of the questions here. And Eric, while I do that, talk a little bit about how significant some of the tax planning is that you do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the response that you get from clients. Like a lot of times, even like we talked about engineers here in Houston, they come in, they have their spreadsheets, they're ready to go, they got it all figured out. But then we go through this tax analysis and they're like, oh my God, Troy, that's like a lot, that's a lot different from what my little spreadsheet that and it's oftentimes not a little spreadsheet, it's 12 sheets and they're all tied together. And,
Macros and tabs. And,
Yeah, when you have VLOOKUP on a spreadsheet about your finances, you know there's a little bit extra that went into it.
Yeah. So sometimes what is some of the response and the feedback? While I look at the questions, talk a little bit about some of the experience that you have discussing taxes, unemployments, and then Janice, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah.
Well, what I tell my clients at the end of the day is this is the way that value can be added to your plan without having to worry about what the investments are doing. Right? That's going to be something that's always going to be up and down, but there are a lot of steps that we can proactively take when it comes to the tax planning, which is obviously coming from the income planning and the investments. But the idea behind it is you have this problem because you've done something good, right? You've been able to save for retirement. You have effective retirement plan. It's just how can we essentially keep more of it at the end of the day, right? Clients always come to me and want to specifically talk about returns, right? We talk about, oh, this guy can get me 12%, this guy can get me 10%, this guy can get me 6%. What I care about is how much of it you actually keep, right? You can get a 12% return, but if you're doing it the wrong way, you could very easily keep 6% of that. And so the idea behind it is understanding your trajectory when it comes to your income needs, your expense needs, and how does that layer in with the types of income that you have, the buckets that you can pull from. And Troy, when we're talking about Roth conversions, that's just another way to create a bucket, to create a hedge, to do all the things that you want to do with a little bit more flexibility than, oh, I have one pot and the government has its hand in it.
Yeah.
The way I word it is, we all want to be good citizens, and we'll pay our taxes, but I certainly don't want to pay a dime more than we need to. I would rather spend that money in my own ways, give it to the charities of my choice, or pass that on to my loved ones. So it's really important to add that layer of just not paying attention to your investments and your growth of your portfolio, but how can we strategically lessen the amount that we pay in taxes? Give us the control, you as individuals that have your own portfolios, to be able to do what you want to do with your money and have, your charities of your choice.
So Marcelo says, Troy, I thought that the probability of success just meant a point where adjustments to the plan would be made. We're going to put a semicolon there. And yes, absolutely. As the probability of success declines, we are absolutely going to have a conversation. And typically that conversation is going to revolve around one main thing. It's going to be spending. Because assuming it's going down, because that's the number one thing that we would see. You come in and you say, Troy, I want to spend $100,000 a year. And then we meet 6 months later, you're retired, and now you spent $250,000. Okay, Marcelo, what's going on here, man? Like, you told me $100,000, you spent $250,000. Is this going to continue? It's obviously impacting your long-term security. We need to sit down and really kind of model this out a little bit better. Second half of that, where I inserted a semicolon there, you said, it's not necessarily a number that will tell you if you will succeed or not. So all of these Monte Carlo analyses, all these different softwares, and I could go on about this for a very long time. I know one very prominent firm out there that takes historical performance of asset classes, like stocks returning 11 or 12%. And that's what they use for their Monte Carlo looking forward. So what you want to ask your person is, what is your rate of return? Where are you getting these numbers from? So what we like to use is very conservative estimates that are looking forward, not the stock market is performed like,
past 10 years.
Yeah, look, Dave Ramsey's done a ton for people in this country as far as getting out of debt, but telling you that your mutual fund should average 12% a year moving forward, I think is somewhat risky, if not a little dangerous. When you're planning, you need to be more conservative. So the Monte Carlo analysis, it's going to look at multiple different economic environments as far as the returns in your portfolio, and then how that relates to your overall spending levels, and then what is the likelihood that you die with money. That's all it does. So consider that success or not, that's up to you. What I consider success is what's important to you. Do you take care of your family? Do you spend money on the things that you want to spend on? Do you enjoy your retirement? If we can give you a lower level of risk with more spendable income and you pay less taxes, I consider that a success if you're able to accomplish what it is that you set out to accomplish. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. Have a couple of other just comments here, not really any questions. So I want to jump into the tax, guys. So, all right, Eric, if you kind of bring it back over here to the screen. What I like to do is the comparative analysis. So, Eric, I know this is something that you and I have talked about a lot in various sit-downs. Janice, same thing. Again, we have the current strategy, which is, I guess I should back up for people because, guys, we look at this every single day, and it's a very common screen for us. But I want to make sure we slow down enough so people understand. Literally, there are thousands of different distribution strategies, timings of when you could elect Social Security, the coordination of all those different decisions into your retirement. And I say thousands, but that's obviously underestimating. It's probably trillions. But what this software does, and this is a different software, and I do like to make this disclosure, is that softwares are just information. they're not like the Holy Grail, right? It's not something that we just follow according to the the numbers.
You still need us.
Yeah, there's so much that experience plays into it, and so much that softwares are just limited because you have to make certain assumptions. You have to input various data.
That's why we use multiple of them.
Yeah, and it's not static. It's all dynamic. So, okay. So when we kind of look here, I just want to briefly show you. So what this software does is it ranks all of the various scenarios by the total value received over the course of your retirement. What is total value? It's the combination of income received from Social Security, the estimated value of your accounts that have grown, and the income that you have received. And it isolates all variables and only looks at retirement income distributions, different sequencing, different variations of income distributions from multiple accounts. Rates of return, exact same. The only thing that we're looking at here is taking income in different amounts from various accounts and doing so, running the algorithm to look at what gives you the most value over time. But again, I can look at this from one year to the next, and the numbers change. They change fairly significantly sometimes because you have to stay connected. You have to keep looking at it. Okay, so what it does is based on these static variables, and the one dynamic is the various accounts that we're withdrawing retirement income from. We get about 11 different pages, 10 per page. So they rank them. And here we have the number one. So we're going to go look at this, and we're going to compare it to doing nothing. So what happens if you do nothing? And doing nothing is kind of the conventional mainstream big brokerage firm. This is what's been advised for decades in this country. Let your retirement accounts defer as long as possible. Withdraw from your non-IRAs first. And I don't want to have a big head here, but for some reason it feels like no one was really talking about Roth conversions until we started talking about it. I know that's not true, but I feel like we've been a leading player in this field over the past, let's call it 10 years, of really advocating for people to get Uncle Sam out of their retirement accounts because he's a partner. And whether he is a 40 or 50% partner or a 10, 12, 15, 20% partner, it's really up to you because you're going to pay the taxes. It's just a matter of when do you pay them and how much do you pay them. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
But let's be honest. We have the team. If you go to a lot of these brokerage firms, it's one man behind the desk, and he's making the decisions on the buy and the sell of what stocks you may have, the investments that you have. So there's not a whole lot of time to go in to do the full holistic financial planning. And we have teams dedicated for each one of our households to be able to do this, to be able to utilize the software. So it is a process. It is very much, there is labor involved, and we believe in it.
Yeah, I think one of the big takeaways there is, so we don't have teams for every single household, like a separate team for every single household, but what we do is we have 45, 46, 47 employees, and a large portion of them are financial planning people. And so many times over the years, we've seen a one-man independent RIA with maybe 2 or 3 people there. You simply don't have the capability to do a ton of planning. And even the big firms that have 7 or 8 people, they're independent. I could not imagine doing, Eric, could you imagine doing what we do with 8 people?
Tried it before.
Tried, and
Oh,
he's
God.
joined. He's home now.
Yeah,
He's home
it's a lot. I mean, it's just a lot, right? It's I mean, preparing just for an upcoming client meeting when you have the tax plan, you have the income plan, you have the investment plan. I mean, you're spending hours a lot of time just getting ready for that one meeting.
But we love it.
And then, but
It's our puzzle.
But then you multiply that across, let's say you have 600 clients or 800 clients, 7 employees. Like, how is one advisor doing that, right? And that's the marketing kind of versus the reality in this industry, and that's just kind of the truth.
We'll get to tax planning here shortly.
Okay, so let's do a comparison because look, and I will tell you this, like 95% of the advisors I have met in my career, they're great people. They mean well. They try hard. Sometimes they kind of get taken down a path that maybe necessarily they don't quite understand what they're getting into as far as, different the financial industry has different paths that you can go down, and you want to make sure that you go down the path that you feel is most comfortable for you. And sometimes advisors go down paths that they don't realize they're down that path until it's 5, 6, 7 years later. This is what I talk about a lot, guys. It's required minimum distributions. So the blue is the plan that pays less tax over time. And what we see here is a very clear amount of taxes paid that is much less, versus the green, which is the plan that we showed earlier, which is about $250,000 of more tax paid. So how does required minimum distributions kind of play into the Roth conversion strategy?
So the way that I always look at it is understanding, and actually, S-Sun here actually just asked the question, does RMDs and Medicare and IRMA, all those things factor into this particular software? And the answer is yes, right? And the reason that we have to look at RMDs specifically is because when we look at RMDs are a really good example of how not only the government has a hand in your IRA, but they can also change that at any given point. In the past 4 years alone, they've changed that finish line, 3 times, and it changed those percentages, those tables, and everything. And so when we talk about RMDs, we know it's going to be there, right? We know it's going to be a forced distribution, and we know that it's going to be part of your income plan, right? Whether we get rid of it on the front end with Roth conversions, whether we leave some there left to have RMDs because it may be a necessary piece to supplement your spending. We need to understand is just what are all the other pieces of your plan, right? How much is your Social Security? How much are your dividends from your non-qualified accounts? How much is your pension? And when we have all those things in the equation, we can figure out those break-even points on whether we should be doing Roth conversions, whether we should be spending down the IRAs first as opposed to maybe letting the after-tax money grow, right? So it's not as simple of an answer as just, RMDs are there. It's what combination specifically works for you based on everything that you have in play in your particular plan.
Mm-hmm. And what I like to avoid when I'm working with clients and doing planning, and I know we've talked about in various sessions, it's you want to get away from like having the very large required distributions that exceed your income needs, right? So if you do nothing, you have no income or tax strategy really whatsoever, and then now you hit 73 or 75 and you have to distribute 100, 150, 200,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden, why did you not take that money out, because you're forced to now, in a time frame when taxes were much lower, the rates and also the brackets were much larger? So it's not a matter of are you going to pay taxes? You're going to pay taxes. It's just when do you pay those taxes and how much do you pay? And Janice, I know you have these conversations every single day with people. What's it like when you go through a tax plan? Because if we look at this first Roth conversion, Eric, are we back here over here? Yep. So look, this is all tentative and this is all hypothetical based on the assumptions that we've put in, and this is a hypothetical case. But in the real world, we're kind of using this as a tool that helps us identify what are some of the various choices that we can make and how does that impact your retirement and your security. Okay, so this particular plan in this scenario would recommend a $200,000 Roth conversion in the first year. 2 points to bring up here. First, that's a large conversion. There's going to be a large amount of taxes.
Talk about uncomfortable.
Yeah. Uncomfortable especially if you are not used to writing that type of check to the IRS. Mm-hmm. So how does that conversation go?
And I am not. I am one of those that is not. But the strategy all along in going through life is going to your CPA and saying, bring it down, bring that tax bill down. But we're in an age where the debt of our country is very high. Our interest, or our tax rate's going to go up. I don't know, probably. I can't imagine them going down because we continue to spend. I don't care who's going to be elected into office. So when the question becomes, do I want to pay taxes on my IRA money today, convert it into a Roth IRA, which then will mean that money's going to grow tax-free, and you're no longer going to have a required minimum distribution on that bucket of money. Well, let me think about it. Tell me more, right? Well, what we do know is that tax rates will go up in 2026. So we have 2024 and 2025 to potentially get in on these lower tax rates. Not to mention, has the market been doing good? It's been doing really well. So as your IRA and pre-tax dollars grow, not only could you potentially have a higher tax rate, but you could be potentially paying taxes on a larger bucket of money. It's a snowball effect. So it's definitely a conversation. We're not saying that just because the software says to do a Roth conversion of $200,000 that is the right decision for you, but it is a conversation and it's a starting point for us to say, you know what, let's wake up and let's figure out what we're going to do to be proactive.
All right, so what we want to do here is, since you guys have stayed with us for this long, we're going to do a bonus raffle. So Heather, we're going to do a bonus raffle in 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap this up and we're going to call it a night. So if you have not registered quite yet for the raffle, there should be a QR code on your screen which you can scan and then download our report. Not sure if it's about taxes or the retirement success plan, but download the report. That is going to get you registered for our third raffle, which I think is it's a record for us. We've never done 3 raffles on the live stream. So we're going to do one more raffle.
I think we'll be back.
Yeah. And then we're going to, I want to talk a little bit about this required minimum distribution comparison chart, which are words I thought I'd never say in my entire life. And then I want to get into another word that may not come across as smooth, but composition of assets, because I think this is very important when you get to step 5 of the retirement success plan, the legacy planning. And for those of you who want to leave money to your children, this is very important for you to grasp. And then for those of you who really don't care, it is what it is. So I just want to point out, we've talked about this a little bit, but I just want to kind of make the point very clear. Eric, can you come over here? I wish I could make my computer screen a little bit larger, but...
You want me to do it for you?
You good? Yeah, to the computer. No, I just want you to put the, just to the computer screen. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so we see the chart here. Just to reiterate, this is nothing more than a comparative analysis between doing nothing and doing the Roth conversions. And what we're pointing out here is your estimated required minimum distribution. So in the beginning, it's not a huge difference, but I see people sleeping on this all the time and they have no idea. Like, we've had people come in literally at like 85, 87, 88 years old, and they're like, Troy, I'm distributing $200,000 a year from my retirement account. Can you help me? Like, no, I can't. I mean, there's really nothing I can do at this point. You're just kind of in the bed that has been made, and you just have to follow the law. But what we want to do is to find this, I call it a point of equilibrium. And all that simply means is look at how much the RMD is in the blue. So the blue is you've converted to Roth up to this hypothetical plan, this amount that you've converted. What I call the point of equilibrium is identifying any gap that you have between the amount that you are desired to spend, your Social Security, any other income sources, and then the remaining gap to hit your fixed income spend. We can kind of tie your required minimum distribution from a projected standpoint to about that level, that's kind of equilibrium when it comes to RMDs. Now, could it be more advantageous for you to convert a larger amount of your retirement accounts and have a lesser RMD? Absolutely. This is where all of these different angles need to be looked at, and then just simply a conversation had. Because Eric, it's not black and white. That is the simple truth. Like, we talk a lot about finance and math, but this is so much of what we do is using finance and math and statistics to only give us information that helps us have a more intelligent conversation with someone, to really get down to how they feel and what they want to happen, and then make a simple decision for that year. Yeah. And then do it again next year.
Yeah. No, it really helps when we're talking about these conversions and the immediate impact that it's going to have. Writing that check to the IRS, right? Understanding that a $50,000 to the IRS is never going to be comfortable in any way, shape, or form for somebody. even if we can prove with the numbers that it does help. But what it's showing is that 200,000 is just the top end, right? We showed the number one ranked strategy explicitly here, right? There was, I think to your point, 10 pages or 11 pages of 10 different sequences that still improved the situation with varying degrees of Roth conversions. And GeoPepsi actually brings up a really good point here in the comments talking about the IRMA brackets, right? If you start these Roth conversions at a certain point, Medicare has a couple of years look back on whether or not they're going to charge you more for Medicare, right? That's the way that it works. And so understanding that these are all the choices that you're making and then the ramifications of those, that's what our job is in educating you.
So GeoPepsi just says, this is a ramification. I bring this up because he says, be careful of any Roth conversions at age 63 because at age 65 is Medicare and you have the 2-year look back. So, but one of the things GeoPepsi, and Janice, I'll let you kind of contribute to this. The Medicare IRMA premiums, if you do that conversion at 63, yes, the IRS is going to look back, or actually the Social Security Administration is going to look back at your tax return from that big conversion in when you were age 63. But that's a 1-year excise tax.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, so again, not saying it's right or wrong to take or don't take, but it's a conversation to be had. It's exactly what we're talking about here, because would you rather pay that 1 year of excise tax and then have X amount of potential savings down the road? Or would you rather save money by not doing the conversion? Because IRMA taxes, the income-related monthly adjustment amount that you referred to, it's a 1-year penalty. So would you rather have the 1-year penalty or the lifetime permanent tax penalty of much higher RMDs, potentially higher taxes? So that's kind of part of the discussion that we have, and that comes up all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and even after the fact, 2 years later, someone calls in and says, Troy, we did these conversions, but now all of a sudden my Medicare premiums are up. I said, yes, we talked about that, and we simply believe that over the long term, you are going to save more by doing it this way, even though it will cost you more, GeoPepsi, to your point, over that 1 year.
But it's the 1 year, and when you do the Roth conversions, and your money is now in a Roth IRA, it's tax-free, growing tax-free to you and your spouse if you're married. The important thing to note is that that's usually one of the last buckets of money that you're going to use. So when you pass away, if you have children or family that you want to have inherit the money, that money is going to be passed on as an inherited Roth IRA. That money will be in a bucket that your legacy will not have to pay taxes on, and they can actually leave it in that inherited Roth IRA for up to 10 years and grow tax-free even longer. So it's not just about your lifetime, it's about your legacy plan as well.
Okay, so we're going to have a winner. We're going to wrap this up. Mr. Ashby, we are going to answer your question. I see that you submitted it. Thank you for reminding me here. Heather, who is the winner to our first ever raffle of the Oak Harvest live stream? Ken Lee. Ken Lee, congratulations. So you are the third winner, the first ever third winner of our raffle on these live streams. So Heather will reach out to you and coordinate the delivery of that gift certificate. Really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Okay, so Stephen, the simple answer to your question is, I'm going to summarize it and keep out some of the personal information. Basically, Stephen asked, have we ever used an app called Honest Math? And I have not. And to tell you the truth, I wouldn't have time to actually go through and do the due diligence necessary to answer that question. When we use a software or are considering using a software, we spend hours and hours and hours going through the decision-making process of whether it's something we're going to use for our clients. So, I mean, you can write me a check for like 10 grand and I'll go through that due diligence for you, but probably not worth it. So I can't answer to that, but I will tell you though, on a positive note, it looks like you're not quite retired. You have a TSP as a federal employee. One, if you are over the age of 59 and a half, it's quite possible you can do an in-service distribution. But also we're launching a new program at the beginning of next year that is going to allow people in your situation to be able to still receive help from Oak Harvest Financial Group. So if you're not over the age of 59 and a half, keep staying tuned. We're going to launch that at the beginning of the year with more details. But regardless, hopefully that provides some comfort. So we'll go to you, Eric, for any closing words, and then let you, Janice, close it out.
I think at the end of the day, what this shows is, Troy, you use the number trillions. I don't quite go that extreme when I'm talking to my clients, but there are so many combinations of strategies and approaches that you can take going into retirement. What we do is to try to understand who you are, what your preferences are, to maybe narrow that down to 4 or 5 and give you our best foot forward and what we think is going to fit you based on what we know about you, right? And that's really the approach that you really want in retirement. It's all about finding not only those preferences that you're going to choose to make in retirement, it's about finding the right advisor or the way that you're going to do it yourself. Make sure that you can stay consistent with it over the long term. Right? The last thing you ever want to do is have to switch advisors or completely make an entire pivot 20 years or 15 years into retirement when it's too late to go back to work and those kinds of things. And so that's why it's important to have a plan, stay in tune with your plan, and understand how the choices you have options to that you maybe didn't know up until this point, how those affect not only your life in the short term, but the long term. So.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you joining us, and yes, we are big advocates of helping people optimize their retirement portfolio. But if you're reaching a point where you think you've taken it as far as your spreadsheet's taken it as far as you can, we'd love to talk to you. And we are also advocates of you interviewing different financial planners and different financial advisors out there, because when you make a decision to build out your retirement plan, you want it to be the one and final. So do your due diligence. We'd love to talk to you as well, but it's a big step. But peace of mind and confidence in your future is huge, and we love that in helping our clients that partner with us reach that goal.
Well, Eric, Janice, I think you guys did a great job for your
Well,
first time here. And to everyone that tuned in tonight, if you're a client, we obviously appreciate you. If it's your first time coming across this channel, we do this every single month. Sometimes it's the investment team, sometimes it's the financial planning and our lead advisors.
The people with hair. Love you, Chris and Charles.
But thank you very much for tuning in. So we'll see you in November. If you have any questions, feel free to always reach out to us. But we couldn't do this without you. So thank you so very much. And have a good night.